Now, as I said, all of this is finally percolating because the horror of it is so visible and therefore so undeniable. And one of the things you're seeing, there's this book that came out last year by a writer, Omar El-Akkad. And when I saw it, I immediately knew there's a much more elegant artistic title. We couldn't show it because of the need to fit it into the screen. But essentially, the idea of it is the title of the book, One Day, Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This. And in between that, there's this tax one day, once it's too late to hold anybody accountable, once it's too late to have stopped it, once there's no more personal risk in objecting, everyone will have always been against this. And that's exactly what we're starting to see with the people who have enabled this and supported this for so long, who finally now want to distance themselves from it from their own purely personal motives. Here's Senator Amy Klobuchar, a Democrat from Minnesota, with a very steadfast pro-Israel record in the Senate for the entire time she's been there. And today she decided to stand up, this was actually yesterday, on the Senate floor to talk about how deeply worried and concerned and upset she is by the stories of malnutrition coming out of Gaza and the role that the Israelis are playing in blockading food to starve the people in Gaza to death. She's so moved by it. She had to stand up and make her voice heard. Here's what she said.
Humanitarian aid must immediately reach the civilian population in Gaza. As one pediatric doctor, the leader of the ward at Nasser Hospital in southern Gaza, said, "There is no one in Gaza now outside the scope of famine, not even myself." This is the pediatrician who leads the ward. He says, "I am speaking to you as a health official, but I too am searching for flour to feed my family." As the New York Times notes, the World Food Program, an arm of the United Nations, said this week that the hunger crisis in Gaza has reached, in their words, new and astonishing levels of desperation, with 1/3, that's right, 1/3 of the population now eating for multiple days in a row. If you could ask our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to tell them this is an important matter.
Give order, please.
The suffering we are seeing every day is unacceptable. More measures can be and must be taken to allow Palestinian families to access basic necessities. Those include food, medicine, and shelter. At the same time, we must focus on achieving a ceasefire as soon as possible, one that would release hostages held by Hamas and allow displaced Palestinians to return home. Ultimately, what so many of us want to see is a lasting peace and a two-state solution. But that cannot happen when people are starving. As we pursue that goal, however, it is clear that the system for distributing aid that is now in place, run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, is nowhere near adequate. Yesterday, more than 100 non-governmental organizations issued an urgent call to action, including CARE, Mercy Corps, Oxfam, Save the Children, and so many more. Acute malnutrition is rising. Hundreds of Palestinians have been killed in recent weeks while seeking...
I've heard enough of that performance. Very well delivered. The voice cracking was a nice touch. But as you'll see, as you'll notice, there's no advocacy of any concrete call. You would think this is just some country doing this that the United States has nothing to do with. The United States pays for the Israeli military. It pays for their wars. It pays for the munitions they use to carry all of this out, and has for decades. And Amy Klobuchar is a steadfast supporter of that, as are pretty much all of her colleagues in the Senate from both parties. And in fact, just 2 weeks ago, here is a photograph of 14 senators, 7 from the Republican Party and 7 from the Democratic Party, the perfect balance to illustrate how bipartisan the reverence and support for Israel is in Washington. And There you see Amy Klobuchar. She's right here, smiling. And here's Benjamin Netanyahu. Here's Chuck Schumer. Here's Ted Cruz. Here's Adam Schiff. Just all the kinds of people we're constantly told can never get along in anything. There they all are gathered. You see Netanyahu sort of posing there in front of everybody as some kind of like warrior strut. Benjamin Netanyahu is an indicted war criminal, required to be arrested by any signatory to the International Criminal Court, just like Vladimir Putin is. Just the week before, the IDF and soldiers and settlers in the West Bank murdered yet another American citizen, this one 20 years old, who was born in the United States, lived in the United States, was visiting relatives in the West Bank. And not only did settlers with the backing of the IDF storm their house and beat him to death, they then blocked ambulances from getting to the scene in order to pick him up and bring him to get medical care. And the American citizen died, killed by Israelis. And none of these people had anything to say about this because their loyalty is more to Israel than to even their own fellow citizens. So it's nice that Amy Klobuchar wants to engage in public displays of emotionality about how deeply moved she is, except she was just standing right next to the leader of the government responsible. And again, this is not anything new. He is indicted exactly for these kinds of crimes, for deliberate starvation, among many other things. I should also point out that Amy Klobuchar's statement about the hostages is preposterous. The Netanyahu government has said many times very explicitly that even if Hamas turned over every hostage today, they've said this for months, that they would not stop their war. Their war aim is not to get the hostages back. That's the pretext. Even the hostages' own families know that and have said that, which is why the government has deprioritized getting the hostages back, because that's not their goal. Their goal is to expel all Arabs and Palestinians from all of Gaza, as another minister in the Israeli government yesterday said, and make sure that all of Gaza is exclusively Jewish. They want to cleanse all of Gaza of every Arab and Muslim who lives there, every Palestinian, including Christian Palestinians and Palestinian Catholics, and make it part of the Israeli state where only Israeli Jews are permitted to live there. That's the goal of the war. It doesn't have anything to do with the hostages. That's the pretext. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.